But first, using and abusing the troops. That's the focus of tonight's angle. It seems like only yesterday, doesn't it, when the Democrats were worried about deploying the military against Antifa and the BLM mobs who were rampaging across our cities last summer.
Misused our American military for basically his political campaign, totally unable to unite us as a country.
He is misusing military and governmental assets. It is not the role of the U.S. military to go into cities and states and undermine local law enforcement.
President Trump has degraded the independence of the military and ignored some of the dangerous tendencies of political activity within the military.
Well, those same Democrats now have had a change of heart. Liberal D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser announced that 5,000 National Guardsmen will remain in D.C. through at least March. Now, this is down from that obscene number of 25,000 who were called up after the January 6th Capitol riot. Now, did they really think that that insane animal skin guy was planning to return to D.C. with other furry fiends to make a stand? I don't think so. This is all political theater directed by Democrat leadership with a horrible edge. They're using the military right now to ratchet up the drama of their kangaroo impeachment trial of former President Trump. And the troop presence, it allows these liberals to do what they do best, play the victim, despite evidence of any serious ongoing threat. And it furnishes them with a backdoor way to execute their next agenda item, purging the military of any political opponents. Now, according to The Hill, Democrats will accomplish this by inserting language into this year's National Defense Authorization Act to address extremism at the Pentagon and other federal agencies. We know that some groups actively attempt to recruit our personnel into their cause or actually encourage their members to join the military for the purpose of acquiring skills and experience, a senior Pentagon official told reporters earlier this month. Now, of course, this is all kind of vague for a reason. The broader and more opaque the language, the easier it is to cancel military members and other government personnel who don't fall in line politically or even culturally. Now, most people would agree that generally dangerous extremists should not be allowed to serve and join in the military. Of course, we don't want members of say, ISIS embedding themselves in our ranks. Obviously, KKK, of course not. But that's not really who the Democrats are talking about.
When it's come to white extremist groups, domestic terrorists, somehow we find ourselves unable to address those groups.
The fear that other Americans, President Trump's supporters, will harm their fellow Americans. Some of them far-right extremists with whom President Trump has been playing footsie for years.
What is the definition of the Republican Party right now, or are there several?
There are several, but unfortunately the largest right now, I think, is Trump loyalist. And part of that Trump loyalist faction is true conspiracy theorists and kooks and extremists.
Trump loyalists. Wow. They want to fuel the narrative that not only is your conservative neighbor or family member untrustworthy, suspicious, and potentially seditious, but that the military itself is full of right-wing extremists ready to rise up at a moment's notice.
To rid our ranks of racists and extremists, and to create a climate where everyone fit and willing has the opportunity to serve this country with dignity. The job of the Department of Defense is to keep America safe from our enemies. But we can't do that if some of those enemies lie within our own ranks.
Okay. Just take that in for a moment. Our Secretary of Defense says the Pentagon, with its bloated budget, cannot provide for the national defense unless it carries out, essentially, purges of undesirables within the military ranks. Forget the fact that China is poised for global domination. It's likely going to take Taiwan. Forget about that.
The rise of domestic violent extremism is a serious and growing national security threat. The Biden administration will confront this threat with the necessary resources and resolve. The first is a tasking from President Biden sent to the ODNI today, requesting a comprehensive threat assessment coordinated with the FBI and DHS on domestic violent extremism. This assessment will draw on the analysis from across the government and, as appropriate, non-governmental organizations.
Whoa, 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 whoa. What non-governmental organizations is she talking about exactly that are going to report on their fellow Americans? The ACLU, Black Lives Matter, Planned Parenthood, anti-gun rights organizations? I mean, presumably they think anyone who disagrees with their far-left goals are extremists. Now, from what we've already heard, the Biden administration say it's clear that they're going to use the power and surveillance of the U.S. government to keep tabs on a lot more people than we ever would have thought would have been embedded in government agencies as domestic terrorists. Yeah, law-abiding Americans who maybe the party in power think they're getting out of line.
As a part of this, the NSC will undertake a policy review effort to determine how the government can share information better about this threat, support efforts to prevent radicalization, disrupt violent extremist networks, and more.
Sharing information. Well, some Democrats are already pushing an even broader ideological purge of the entire national security apparatus. Now, earlier this month, Congresswoman Stephanie Murphy proposed a bill to keep Trump supporters from holding security clearances. She did this by asking applicants whether they participated in the January 6, 2021 activities at the U.S. Capitol or a similar Stop the Steal activity and the precise role they played at such activity. Even if it does not constitute a criminal offense, attendance at an event designed to delegitimize the results of a presidential election and prevent the peaceful transfer of power raises serious questions about an applicant's suitability for a security clearance. Wow. President Xi Jinping would be very proud. Drive out all political opposition, drive them underground, force everyday Americans to live in fear, encourage neighbor to snitch on neighbor, family to snitch on family, American against American. My friends, the message is clear. If you're a conservative who has any questions about election irregularities, then you better shut up if you want to keep your job. First Amendment, forget about it. Which makes it all the more ironic that it's being cheered on by the media.
I do think we have a problem with infiltration in law enforcement, in the military, and it's going to take a while for us to both de-radicalize and remove those elements from positions of authority.
This screening needs to happen across the entire military, and we should be removing people that are members, even if they are not active members, because it's really against their oath of office.
You can't stand by idly and see people in uniform, whether it's law enforcement or military, have QAnon patches on.
This is absolutely poisonous for the country. Republicans have to stand up and stop Democrats from targeting our active duty military personnel or our vets. These men and women have endured oftentimes repeated tours of duty abroad, risking life and limb, many times coming back to destroyed families, and now they're viewed with suspicion and targeted by elected officials at home. Republicans need to step up in unison and demand that the Defense Department and the Biden administration clearly define what they think constitutes extremism. Now, if a member of the military voted for Trump, does that make him an extremist? Now, what if someone complains on Facebook that the federal government wastes a lot of money? Is she an extremist? What if they say that Roe versus Wade should be overturned? Or what if they participate in the March for Life? What if they're conservative Baptists? They believe that sex outside of marriage is immoral. Is that extremist? What if they have guns at home and they're lifetime NRA members? Will they now be considered extremists or even terrorists? We deserve to know. You see where this is destined to lead. And it is certainly not to a freer and more united America. And that's the angle.